This episode of the podcast is brought to you by LeafWell. Hello, listeners of Cannabinoid Connect. Have you ever thought about getting a medical cannabis card? The process can be intimidating and difficult to navigate, to say the least. That's why I've partnered with LeafWell, the easiest and most affordable way to get a medical card in Texas and in 32 other states in the US. LeafWell seamlessly connects you to a network of doctors that will help you get certified online in minutes. LeafWell is run by data scientists, cannabis specialists, and patient advocates that are passionate about increasing access and education around medical cannabis use. LeafWell's patient support team is also there to support you throughout your entire journey using medical cannabis. As I mentioned, I've partnered with LeafWell to provide all my listeners with a discount to become certified for medical cannabis. Simply go to their website at leafwell.com and use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical card. Again, that's leafwell.com. Use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical cannabis card. LeafWell only charges if you get approved. So what do you have to lose? Visit leafwell.com today. Use the promo code CCTX to get certified for medical cannabis, risk-free. Zane, what's going on, man?
Hey, how are you? Good evening.
Good evening to you as well. Where are you at? Are you in Colorado, Zane? Am I getting that right?
No. I'm in Savannah, Georgia.
You're in
Believe it or not.
Georgia. That's right. Okay, because before we started talking, I was admiring your beautiful American flag. For those that are just listening, Zane has this really cool flag, and you're telling me about it's a dated flag, right? Because it
It
doesn't.
is. It is. It
Yeah.
is 48 stars. So it is not Alaska or Hawaii.
Wow. Yeah, you don't see
Um,
those too often. And that was in an antique store in Savannah, Georgia. Is that right?
yeah, there's so many antique stores littered around here, and if you go into a lot of the restaurants or shops or things like that, everything has this like antique vibe. So I figured, hey, when you're down here, let's do it up. I like it too. It's like a cool feel. I like history and I like,
Sure.
historical things. So yeah, fun memorabilia.
I've never been. Well, I've never been to Savannah, and I'm thinking about it now. I don't even think I've been to Atlanta and spent time there. Like I've had layovers, I think, and whatnot, but life
Sure.
hasn't
Every
taken me
every
there.
every American passenger has probably been through Atlanta at some point. But Savannah for sure should be a must see on your destination list because it's rich with culture, food. It is my favorite American city. Like I can definitively say that hands down.
Wow. That's awesome, man. Well, when you speak about like the culture of Savannah, Georgia, I want to talk about, what you're seeing in terms of the cannabis culture there. But, before we even get there, tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about yourself and your relationship with the plant and what brought you to being the founder and CEO of Cannador.
Sure. So it was really about 2013, 2014 when I officially launched. I had the idea in 2013. Um, but going backwards before that, I've always smoked, even in high school. And I'm I'm down to break boundaries here because I was a pretty good student, mostly B's and A's. But I was senior and junior class president.
Wow.
And I got into a decent college, Pepperdine University.
Yep.
So I love smoking weed, and I also played sports. I played lacrosse all throughout high school. And we made it pretty far in the state championship, arena there. But I never let it affect me. I never, I never personified the typical sort of stoner, if you will,
Right.
and I think that threw a lot of people for a loop because all my friends who I hung out with looked exactly like that. I
well,
mean,
well, here's a question. At that age,
yeah,
right? I've had a lot of guests on, and even myself personally,
yeah,
where we consumed at a young age. but didn't realize, like, at least in my case, I didn't realize that it was therapeutic. It was something that was actually calming me down. I mean, I was an athlete as well. I was kind of always hyped up and energetic and on edge. So did you see that or was it more recreational? Like you just liked like the feeling, or
Yeah, I
what
gotta
is it?
say it was purely recreational. I didn't even know that it was
Right.
therapeutic. I mean, we probably did it to the point of too much because that's when everybody always vividly remembers, okay, the paranoia,
Right.
and that came about. Bong rips are the shot of vodka, right?
Yep.
It's right to your head and
That's
you
right.
feel it immediately. And yeah, I would say we didn't. It's not like how I use it now.
Right.
But now I use it therapeutically. Now I use it like a glass of wine. Now I'm not interested in super high THC. In fact, I'm more interested in higher CBD and lower THC strains. So whatever I can get my hand on, that's just got a little bit more of an equal balance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it does make me more chatty, makes me more engaged, more interested
Mm-hmm.
in communicating with strangers. I'll say it kind of opens it up for me. So to
Imagine my
some,
position with the podcast. I mean, yeah, that's exactly what it does for me as well. So
right,
we're on the
right,
same page.
yeah, yeah. But getting back on, to the beginning, where I started in my journey, really no different than any other young person, kind of like a That 70s Show sort of thing, where you're just hanging out in someone's basement, getting stoned. Um, and then flash forward to college. I went to a pretty religious school, so it was kind of iffy, touchy. I definitely found my friends that smoked, and I mean that was easy.
Right.
We could find each other.
You gave the wink or like, oh, you too.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It was really
yeah.
only like the very first house party when you see someone smoking a joint or just something, a bong or anything. It's like, hey, like, okay, you're one of us. I'm one of you.
Right. Right.
Um,
Which is so weird. I even like experienced that in the workplace early on. Like you meet coworkers at like happy hour and you start talking, or so it just comes up and you're like bonded in that way moving forward.
Sure,
You know.
absolutely, and it really is. It's that way from the get go. Um, I think you're just more in sync.
Right.
But it's really today no different than, or should be treated no differently than going out and grabbing a beer with uh, with your friends or your coworkers.
Right.
So flash forward then through college, and uh, I originally wanted to go into entertainment. So I worked at Paramount Picture Studios for an independent production company on the lot for a couple years. And this was right around 2009 when the market, uh, the
Right.
bottom fell out. And a lot of the projects that were slated evaporated.
Canceled. Yeah.
Yeah, canceled, evaporated. So it became a game of going from job to job. And I could do, any odd job I could get my hands on just to pay the bills. And it was too tough. I didn't like that. I got tired of it. And, I certainly didn't like the culture either. Um, you had to be a certain way, think a certain way. So I decided to go back and get a business degree. I got my MBA at Claremont. Um,
Wow.
and during that period, I was working for a management consulting firm and knew that I wanted to come up with something. I wanted to come up with my own company. I had no idea what. I really didn't. I was just like, hey, I've got this MBA. I'm kind of pivoting here,
And this was your
course
first
correct.
entrepreneurship kind of pivot, or
Yes, yeah. I've
yeah.
never, I've never owned a business before, started anything. So,
Right.
I had, zero entrepreneurial history. And
But you
this
knew you
was
got to
it.
be there. That's the feeling. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
I knew I had to do something. I just didn't know what.
Right.
So one night out in Los Angeles, I was getting ready with my buddies, getting ready to party, and he pulled out a shoebox and opened it up, and there was, weed bags and grinder loosely, shit was just kind of loosely strewn
Thrown
about. And I
everywhere.
thought, like,
Yeah.
man, there's got to be something better than this. And there were other things, but they kind of had, a Bob Marley logo on it, or and no knock on that at all, by the way.
Right. But not
It's
your
just
style. Not
it
like,
wasn't my
yeah.
style, so I wanted something a little nicer. And as I kind of went down the rabbit hole of storage, I found that humidity played a role the same way it does for tobacco and cigars. So that was the light bulb moment. And I thought, okay, I need to pursue this. If there's a tobacco humidor, how come there's not a cannabis humidor? Well, let's call it a Cannador. And bada bing, bada boom, 2014, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Cannador, what a great name, by the way, too. I mean, it flows
Keep it simple.
perfectly. Yeah. Well, so there are a number of things that I want to unpack with that. So
Yeah.
first off, um, you mentioned like the light bulb moment with cigars and tobacco, and from doing some research, in preparation for this podcast, you acquired a US patent that was formerly owned by a cigar accessories company. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. The guy who invented it wasn't really doing that much with it. I think that he really capitalized on it in the late 90s when the cigar boom was humming,
Mm-hmm.
and um he didn't want to put more time and effort into it. It wasn't his first source of income. So I adapted it slightly. So in each and every one of those um, cases, there's a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of beads. Those are humidity beads. And those beads come in different calibration zones, if you will. So, like 50 to 60%, 60 to 70%, 70
And
to
that's
80%.
what
And
was patented. That was part of that patent, or is
yeah,
that
it
yeah?
is. It's ridiculous to me that the patent actually even went through. I always kind of liken it to, like, the shoelace or something. Like, you got to be kidding me. Like, someone patented the shoelace, like, so what does that mean? I got to pay a licensing fee for every shoe. Um, so yeah, it was pretty crazy that he was able to patent this, because it's basically just an amalgamation of, like, items already in existence.
Right.
But if you're using it for a specific purpose, such as a humidor,
Mm,
then that is the novelty that the US government allowed.
gotcha.
So in any event, yeah, he had originally created it for cigars. I had modified it and for cannabis. And for the first couple of years, I was paying him royalties on it. And I just decided, you know what? Competition's starting to kind of nip at my heels here. Cannabis legalization is around the corner. I mean, come on. How much longer we got to wait? And I thought, let's just go for it. So I bought it from him. We agreed on a price, and I um, rebranded it to VaporBeads, or VaporBeads.com. And now, you can use it for cannabis or tobacco. You just choose your desired humidity range.
Right, right.
But I love the product because it actually works. It does what it says. You just dip it in water, and it regulates the humidity to the right zone.
Wow.
And it's not like a sponge, because that's one of the other things that people would say, where, oh, you can dip a sponge in water. Well, the sponge will just exhaust all of that moisture with no clear cut pattern. But these beads they have micropores and have a salt based solution on it. So it is both a desiccant and a humidifier when you give it moisture.
That makes sense. I mean, with your example of the sponge, it makes me think. I mean, with cannabis, you definitely don't want too much humidity and moisture, right?
Right,
Because there's mold issues that could potentially happen, or
right.
and I'm sure you've gotten those inquiries, right? I mean, just launching has
That was
been
my absolutely that was my biggest fear starting out was, dear God, what if people get mold and then blame me? Um, so what I've had to do over the years, because this has been one of the biggest challenges, is that humidity is different all over the United States, let alone the world.
right.
But the people in Southeast Florida are experiencing ambient humidity a lot different than someone like you in the Rockies,
I'm in
um,
Texas, but it's
or
humid.
Texas.
Yeah.
So it's super humid in Texas. But like somebody in the Rockies in general, that humidity is going to be way lower, and they're going to need more humidity just to maintain whatever it is they're storing. So it's just different all over the US. And what I've decided to do is to start out smaller with less is more approach, because you can always add moisture to it by dipping a little bit more in water versus, dipping half the thing or a third of it in water and then, finding out you've got an Amazon rainforest in your humidor. You don't want that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. From the get-go, that was a concern of mine, and I wanted to ensure that we were giving people the right parameters to go by, and most importantly, making sure that that humidity doesn't go over 69, 70, 71, 72. That's when you start to get into that precarious threshold of uh, potential mold growth. It doesn't just mean if 70, then mold. It just means you're inviting it.
Hmm. And with those Cannador products, I mean, is there a thermostat that kind of tells the temperature within the inside of the bottle? I mean, how can someone tell
Yeah,
if it's
absolutely. I mean, there is the tell that you can look at it visually.
I
When you
brought
dip
it
the
up too, so
nice.
we can show some pictures if you'd like. For those that are not seeing the video, we're on Zane's website right now.
Yes, Cannador.com. And if you click on any one of those products, you'll see that white bead case on there. When you dip it in water, the beads turn clear. When they're dry, they're white. So there's the visual cue. But if you want exact measurements, we retail the Bovita hygrometer, and it's a sensor about the size of a $50. And it syncs with your smartphone and shows you the relative humidity in real time.
I like that.
Um,
That's cool.
it's a great tool, especially for the price point. Um, and it also allows you to set thresholds. So it'll alert you when the humidity is too low or too high.
Wow. And this is
Um,
mahogany, right? The wood.
the interior is mahogany, and then you have your choice on the exterior for most models. Not all models, but most models, you have the choice of a lighter colored exterior mahogany. And we use an African species of mahogany, which is a little bit lighter. Most people are used to seeing mahogany as like super dark, because it's stained. So none of the wood on the exterior we stain. We just give a clear satin finish, mainly because I kind of like that natural look.
Right.
Um, so that was the choice behind that. But yeah, we wanted to give people two choices because everybody's got different furniture. So you want it to kind of match with wherever it's going.
Right, right. No, I mean, you thought through that, of course. I mean, that is the clientele, right? It's someone who wants a more upscale, product, storage product where they can easily and efficiently organize their cannabis material and, tools and apparatuses. And it's beautiful what you've done. And I even see there's a lock there too. So in terms of child
Yeah,
safety and not getting into it,
yeah,
yeah.
that's super important to parents. And that's one of the primary reasons why parents want to get something that has that capability. because their little ones are curious, and we don't want that.
Right. No, absolutely. And also the holidays are coming up. So is there any type of like promotions that you're running or deals?
Yes. Right now, at least through the end of the month, we're doing a 15% off on every single one of those Cannadors. So that's still going on into effect. I call it like a seasonal harvest sale, if you will. But yeah, no, it's the holiday season, so and I know firsthand how difficult it is out there with inflation and the cost of groceries and rent going up, and it's just been a relentless grind for a lot of people. So whatever I can do to kind of alleviate that, but still keep the lights on.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean it looks like it's not a cheap product to produce or to manufacture.
No,
So
no, there's a lot that goes into these. So it just kills me when something like this ever gets damaged in transit. Because I mean, it's not impossible for these UPS guys to punt one of these things for the final finish. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
right.
oh man, like it's such a $300 or $400 unit, and it's got like a dent in it. It's like, well, it's kind of difficult. It's not solid wood, so it is veneer, but it's it's impossible to fix, dented or cracked veneer unless you redo the whole thing.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, fingers crossed that that does not happen.
No, no, and every holiday season presents those kind of challenges. So,
Right.
but look, the UPS claims process is a breeze.
Nice. Well, what's in store for Cannador? I mean, you've been at this since 2014. I mean, what are
Yeah.
you focused on with 2 months left in the year of 2022 and beyond?
Well, this year was not just challenging because of, um, you know, it was definitely a pinch in terms of revenues. We couldn't expect the same sort of growth we saw in years in previous years with
Hmm.
everybody being locked in and shopping online. I mean, that was explosive. Um, so what I wanted to do this year, and this was kind of the tough part, was to launch in Europe. And now we're focusing on Australia. So we've got a distributor potentially going to happen in Sydney, and then we've got a distributor in Amsterdam. So we just recently launched
Nice.
the European website, and looking forward, launching in Australia would be great. Australians have a tough time importing products. Their customs is very, very particular about what's going in and out. It's an island nation, what are you gonna do?
Right.
So, so they have to wait a long time. I mean, sometimes it's like 2 or 3 weeks just to get through their customs. So for us to
Wow.
be able to provide these products being sold within Australia would be a great thing for Australians.
You say that like because they're an island countries because like maybe the possibility of smuggling and all that, like they have to double check what's coming through
I
or
mean, no, it's mainly, I think, because of they don't want pests or some sort of, some beetle or something like that,
oh, I
or
see. To
some,
damage.
like, yeah, damage. Their ecosystem is fragile, and I think they're probably looking at it from an environmental standpoint where they just need to protect that. Um, but that's an increasingly hard thing to do in a globalized world like with what we have now, like think about how many critters we have brought over here to the United States that are invasive species that have, mowed down swaths of trees. So
Right.
I think that's primarily why they're so strict, is they want to protect and maintain their ecosystem.
I see.
But yes, smuggling probably plays a role too. I mean, they do kind of have a history of,
Right.
being a prison island.
Exactly.
No offense, guys. No offense.
Yeah, no offense. No offense. Don't mean tweet us or anything, please.
Yeah,
Well, I want to go back to what we talked about initially. We kind of touched on, well, I asked the question and I want to circle back to it now, is the culture. We can start with Savannah, Georgia, but I mean, being an ancillary cannabis company, right? Like
yeah,
Cannador, you're in every state because there's no plant touching involved. So what are you
right.
seeing in terms of just a different culture, starting in the US, and then we can even talk more broadly, like you said, you launched in Europe. So maybe the differentiations in those countries.
Yeah, great point. When I first started, California was obviously the largest market, and it was a great boon to kind of get me going. But believe it or not, Texas was like the second runner up, and
Whoa.
then Massachusetts. So it was really those three states that first adopted this product. And I couldn't really put my finger on like why. Um, uh, then Florida
So
came along.
here's the question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In that sales process, did you have data to inform the
Yeah,
intention
no.
of
So
buying
this
like cigar or cannabis?
this is the rub for all businesses like mine is that I cannot advertise. So every single thing I've had to focus on is SEO. So it's 100% pull, not push.
Right.
So this is just organic search traffic. It's me just writing articles and tagging various keywords like weed humidor, cannabis humidor, things like
Yeah, I,
that.
I know how it works, but that's a lot of volume. So it makes my mind think of this. It makes my mind think either the space is so niche that you're doing a good job of pumping content and winning the
Yeah.
conversation online, or people are naturally word of mouth searching try to find you because they've heard about it maybe I mean, they
Yeah.
couldn't have heard about it on marketing because you said you're not pulling that lever. So maybe
Right.
it's like trade shows or like actual other customers, or I mean,
I can tell you certainly it's not trade shows. I haven't participated in any trade shows in the United States. Um, we also distribute in Canada out of Regina, Saskatchewan. And we've gone to trade shows in Toronto and Vancouver. And this was right at the tippity top of the crazy bubble.
oh no.
So, yeah, there was a lot of, you know, large scale operations participating in these trade shows. So it was more B2B. Well, obviously I'm B2C, so it was great to have some people come in, but for the most part, it was just businesses looking for business.
Mhm.
But no, to answer your earlier question, this is all just typing online. This is nothing to do with trade shows or advertising or anything.
Wow. Well, that's
Um,
you're doing an awesome job, man. That's great. I mean, like you're doing everything right in terms of, like you said, the pull model versus the push model, because that's
it's all
really
I can
all
do.
you can do.
It's
Yeah.
all I can do. I know that my sales would quadruple if I were able to advertise in some of the more mainstream things. Um, the cost is kind of prohibitive for some of the big mainstream media things. But yeah, it's so niche. I didn't have a lot of competition from the beginning.
Wow. That's great. I would love to know, like when you say Texas, I'm like, okay, I know that there are a lot of cannabis
Houston,
consumers here, right?
Houston.
But I'm wondering, like, are they buying for this again for the tobacco and the cigar? Because there are cigar smokers out here too, right? The old boy
Right.
Texans. But
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, that's
No,
just
they're smoking weed, and I mean, like I said, it's primarily like Houston, and then Austin.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
Houston first, and then Austin second in terms of sales volume.
Wow. You would think
Um,
Austin would be number one because that's I
well,
mean,
yeah, I mean, yeah,
but
I
Houston
would.
has the biggest population, I think, of all the major cities in Texas. I think
They
Houston's number
do.
one. Yeah.
They do, and I was walking around even downtown Houston at one point, and I could smell it on every street corner. So whether it's legal not there or not, like people are smoking it.
That's awesome. It's kind of like that in Dallas, not so much yet. You're smelling it more and more, and but it's taken a little longer than say like a Houston or an Austin. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, what else, Zane? I mean, we've covered a lot. Is there anything else that's on your mind that we haven't talked about that you want to cover?
No, not nothing in particular other than letting people know that humidity does play a role in preserving terpenes. Number one. Number two, terpenes modulate the effects of the cannabinoids, so it does affect your high. It doesn't make you higher, it just affects your high. And number three, if you get dried bud, you don't have to throw it out. It's not at the end of its ropes. You can rehumidify or reintroduce moisture to flower. I do not recommend using anything like an orange peel or fruit because that will invite bacteria or mold growth. Some people swear by it, but if you're not careful and you let that fruit sit too long, then you're gonna have a science experiment on your hands. So
Yeah.
just
There's gonna
be
be shit
prepared for that.
growing in there. Like
Yeah, yeah. So I really want to stress to anybody who's listening out there or is curious, humidity can play a role between 58 and 65% relative humidity is sort of the zone that we stick in. You can have it a little bit lower on the spectrum if you enjoy vaping, and a little bit higher on the spectrum if you enjoy bong rips or joints, or full all out combustion. But we only create storage products for flower and maintaining flower. So no real plans for anything like oil or wax or things of that nature. But one of the questions I do get asked a lot is, do you have anything for cannagars? Um,
mm.
now those
And for those that don't know, go ahead
yeah,
and explain what cannagars are.
that is a weed cigar, a
Right.
literal
Like a blunt.
like a large one. And they can wrap them with the canopy leaves from cannabis on the exterior wrap. Uh, there's only a handful of companies that are specializing in making cannagars. They are pretty expensive because the process to make them is pretty cumbersome. It's not. Well, I'll just say it's just specialty. So as a result, it can get pretty expensive. But in any event, you're not smoking the whole thing all at once. So people want to be able to smoke it and maybe go back to it at a later time. Well, if they do that, they're going to need to store it someplace and to keep it fresh.
Hmm.
And so we are experimenting with different sizes for cannagars. But at the moment, we only have one small size, and it's primarily for pre-rolls or joints.
Got you. That makes sense. I mean, why not, right? That seems like that is gonna stay the Cannagars kind of style of consumption, right? I mean,
Right.
you're lounging, you're sitting back, and you need to keep those things humidified. You need to keep some,
Yeah.
a regulated temperature in there, especially for the leaves. So,
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely. You don't want it drying out on you, and if you've ever smoked dry weed before, it's harsh on the throat and burns your lungs. So
yeah,
this can help mitigate that.
yeah. The worst kind of weed, in my opinion, is when I mean, it's high quality, but when you break it up, it just turns into dust. Like it just
Yeah.
turns, like you don't want
You
that.
should be able to flat press it and still have some sponginess to it. You shouldn't, I guess I should say, you shouldn't flat press it and have it stay flat. That's a little bit too much humidity, but just enough to have some spring to it or bounce is ideal. So,
I like that. I like
yeah,
that. Yeah. I
And
think I
I'm
inherently knew that, but you reinforced it. So there you go.
it's it really can make your smoking experience much better if you have properly humidified weed.
Mhm. Well, Cannador is the place to go. Where can people find y'all's website and social media to find more, especially with the holidays coming?
Sure, Cannador.com. That's Cannador.com. And you can see us on all social media for the same handle, just at Cannador.
Nice. Zane, it was a pleasure talking to you, man. Keep it up. I look forward to just seeing this company evolve and be part of this huge movement, which is the legal cannabis industry.
Absolutely. I'm excited for the new frontier, whatever it brings, but hopefully legalization comes soon. So thank you for allowing me to introduce this product.
Of course, yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.